Are you enjoying the Chosen series on the life of Jesus? Because I am. In fact, I'm enjoying it so much that I'm making a series of videos myself that address what I see as one of the gaps in the Chosen series. Now please, don't get me wrong. I love what Dallas Jenkins and crew are doing, and I think it's a very biblical and compelling portrayal of the life of Jesus in the Gospels. But the problem is that in the 21st century, many people who are watching are not familiar with the storyline of Jesus in the Gospel accounts, nor are they familiar with the historical events, politics, and customs of Jews in the first century. So, to a fair amount of people at least, some things in the series appear a bit odd or just don't make any sense at all. My videos attempt to fill in those gaps in order to make watching The Chosen clearer and therefore more enjoyable and impactful. I've already done videos on some of the overall issues that may need clarification in the series, like a basic question like, what is a Jew? Or why were the Romans in the Holy Land in the first place? What are Pharisees, Sadducees? And the difference between the written and oral law. And there's many more. I'm also doing some videos that explain specific questions that viewers have in each episode, and this is the third one in that group. Okay, Season 1, Episode 3 begins with scenes of Jesus praying passionately during the night. And why are these intense and emotional scenes portrayed here? Well, I think that they remind us that Jesus must have struggled with his identity and calling, for sure in the beginning of his ministry, and of course it happens again at the end at the Garden of Gethsemane. Think about it. What he was about to enter into was an inconceivably difficult path that would bring with it mounting opposition and hatred towards himself and towards those who stood with him. And of course it would culminate in the cross and shortly thereafter in the resurrection. Now, the New Testament shows Jesus as both fully God and truly human. The God part of Jesus' identity is beyond our comprehension. But we can relate to the human side of Jesus in his deep angst and what he knew awaited him on that path. So of course he was in real emotional agony at what was to come, and he needed to get strength from his heavenly Father. Hence the impassioned praying at the very beginning of this episode. Other issues. In this episode, more than any other, so far, we see Jesus at work as a carpenter, working with wood and making tools and even toys. The Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, use the word tekton to describe both Jesus and his stepfather Joseph in terms of their trade. In Greek, tekton means something like craftsman or artisan rather than specifically carpenter. A tekton could repair a broken tool or household item, could cut and shape wood to be used in building a structure or fashioning an implement. A tekton might also work in stone to build the walls of a house or a boundary wall for a garden, orchard, or field. So in our understanding, tekton might be something more like a combination of craftsman and handyman. In this episode, we see Jesus fashioning toys. Did they have toys in ancient times? Well, of course. In ancient times all over the world, children played with all sorts of toys just as they do today. Ancient toys included things like dolls made out of wood and fabric, animal figures carved from wood and bone, miniature ox carts, wagons and houses, spinning tops and hoops, toy weapons, and even dice and board games. And who knows, maybe Jesus did make toys, though the Gospels never say specifically that he did. We also see in this episode a Jewish family eating a meal together, and this would be the family of Abigail, the little girl who is the first of the children to meet with Jesus in this episode. Which brings up the subject of food. What would an average family typically eat in that time and place? Well, almost every meal would feature bread as the staple, maybe dipped in olive oil to add some flavor. Some scholars estimate that fully 50% of all calories consumed in ancient Israel came from wheat or barley ground into flour and baked as bread. People also ate fresh and dried fruit like apples, pomegranates, figs, raisins, etc., as well as olives and olive oil, eggs, beans, lentils, chickpeas, and other vegetables. Meat was eaten on special occasions, such as at festivals like Passover, and of course, the meat had to be kosher. So that meant that only beef, mutton, venison, goat, chicken, and other birds, but not birds of prey, were allowed. They also ate fish of different varieties, but not shellfish. Kosher fish must have fins and scales. When they could get them, people seasoned their food with salt, herbs, and spices like cumin, dill, coriander, mustard, and others. Honey was consumed either directly on food or mixed with flour and dried fruit to make a sort of sweet cake. Along with meals, people drank water and wine. Now, wine was often mixed with water since water was usually not sanitary, and wine was more of a luxury item. But mixed together, they were a daily drink for many people. For celebrations and special occasions, wine might be drunk straight or even spiced. Maybe you noticed the prayer that Jesus said before meals. It went something like this in Hebrew: Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem mit haaretz. Blessed are you, Lord, our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Now this prayer is one that Jews often say today at their meals. We know that Jesus did pray at mealtime, but whether he prayed that or something else is uncertain. We also see Jesus praying before bed. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings sleep to my eyes and slumber to my eyelids. Again, he may or may not have prayed that prayer, but it wouldn't be out of character for those exact words to have been spoken. In Hebrew or Aramaic, of course, Jesus was almost certainly conversant in both languages, and which brings up the subject of language. What language did Jesus speak? Well, about 600 years before Jesus' time, the Jews had been taken into exile in Babylon, and at that time they lost their original Hebrew and took up the language of their captors, which was Aramaic. So the Jews returning from captivity before Jesus' time brought with them this Aramaic language. So most likely Jesus grew up speaking Aramaic. He may have dabbled a bit in Greek because the Greeks had been in the region for quite some time, and to do business you often had to use Greek. And he certainly would have gone to school to learn Hebrew. So he probably was conversant in at least 2, if not 3, languages. A couple of hygiene issues are portrayed in this episode. Jesus washes his feet before bed. Now I'm sure this was shown because in that culture feet got really, really dirty each day. Shoes, as we think of them, were largely unknown, and people went in sandals or barefoot. Going to bed with clean feet would certainly be both healthy and very soothing. In this episode, the children arrive early one morning at Jesus' camp, and they wake him up. And they begin asking questions while Jesus is washing his face and brushing his teeth. So, did ancient people brush their teeth? Well, they didn't have toothbrushes and toothpaste as we do. But for thousands of years, people cleaned their teeth by chewing on soft wood from twigs obtained from a variety of trees. And Jesus would have had access to twigs from what Arabs of the region today call a rock. This tree is also known as miswak, and it provides the ideal chew stick. Some people in the Middle East today still use it for that purpose. Now there's a scene in which Jesus is teaching the children to sing Psalm 133, verse 1. In English it goes, "Behold how good and pleasing it is for brothers to dwell together in unity." And Jesus sings it, "Behold how good and how pleasing," and the children repeat, and so on. He's teaching them this psalm in song form. I learned a version of it in my early Christian life, and in Hebrew it is Hine matov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad, and it goes like this: Hine matov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad, and it goes on, and sometimes you can sing it as a round. There are a lot of different tunes that Jews will use to sing that very song today. Then there's the Shema, which some have described as the core belief of Judaism, and it comes from Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. Once again in Hebrew, it's Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, which translates as, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." This is the clearest statement of monotheism that human literature provides, and it's the core belief of Judaism. One God, the Creator God. And of course, Christians pick up on that as well, as do Muslims. This would be something nearly every Jew memorized and said frequently throughout their life. Finally, one of the children asks Jesus, What is your reason for being here? And I think what the writers of The Chosen are having this child say, if you're someone special like a prophet or the Messiah, what is your mission? Why are you here among us? Why have you come? And Jesus replies with a quote from Isaiah 61 verse 1. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives and release from darkness for the prisoners. This is a very messianic verse, and it would be a signal to anyone with a knowledge of the Old Testament that Jesus was identifying as the promised Messiah of Israel. Okay, these are the main issues that some viewers needed clarification on from this episode. This is Dr. Michael Bogart with Aspect Ministries. I'll see you in Making Sense of the Chosen Season 1, Episode 4. Can't wait.